The day I realized I had been living a lie was the exact moment I looked across the Formica tabletop and realized the woman sitting across from me was the only reason my heart was still beating. For years after losing my childhood home, my savings, and almost my entire sense of self to a devastating workplace injury that left me isolated and penniless, I sat in a sun-drenched roadside diner with the person who had quietly pulled me out of the abyss, unaware that a single slip of the tongue was about to shatter the fragile sanctuary we had built together. If this story touches your soul or reminds you of the quiet miracles that can happen when two people refuse to give up on each other, please take a moment to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, share it with someone who might need a reminder of love, and subscribe to our channel to join our growing community of believers in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances. My name is Callan, and for as long as I could remember, Maeve had been the constant anchor in a world that seemed determined to drift away. We had met a decade ago in our small coastal town, back when we were both wide-eyed dreamers with grand plans that life eventually dismantled piece by piece. When my world collapsed after a crane accident destroyed my knee and my career as a structural technician, everybody I thought I could count on vanished into the background noise of life, everybody except Maeve. She was the one who showed up at the hospital with terrible cafeteria coffee and a binder full of physical therapy schedules, the one who patiently sat with me through the silent, dark months when frustration made me unbearable to be around, and the one who pushed me to rebuild my life as a freelance draftsman from the corner of a tiny studio apartment. Through all those years, we were fiercely, proudly best friends, bound by an unspoken code that we were each other's safe harbor, never daring to cross the line into romance for fear that if we failed as lovers, we would destroy the only genuine connection we had left. On this bright Tuesday afternoon, the autumn sun flooded through the high, arched windows of the old oak diner, illuminating the gentle golden flecks in Maeve's hazel eyes and highlighting the light dusting of freckles across her nose. We sat in our usual corner booth, the air thick with the comforting sense of freshly brewed hazelnut coffee, warm maple syrup, and crisp bacon. Maeve was wearing a soft green sweater that made her look radiant despite the exhaustion she tried to hide, having spent the past 3 weeks pulling double shifts at the town archivist's office to help cover her younger brother's college tuition. I sat nursing my third cup of coffee, watching her scribble notes on a paper napkin while absent-mindedly twisting a silver ring on her thumb, a nervous habit she had carried since high school. Everything felt so wonderfully mundane, so beautifully stable, until our cheerful, silver-haired waitress, Clara, walked over carrying a steaming platter of buttermilk pancakes and a fresh pot of coffee to refill our mugs. Clara smiled warmly down at us, resting a motherly hand on the edge of our table as she set down the plates, remarking with a soft chuckle about how wonderful it was to see the two of us taking a break together during such a busy afternoon. She looked at me with a twinkle in her eye and commented that I looked far less stressed than I had a month ago, asking what our secret was for keeping each other grounded through life's relentless storms. Without thinking, operating entirely on a profound wave of warmth, gratitude, and an overwhelming sense of belonging that flooded my chest at that exact moment, I looked up at Clara, gestured casually toward Maeve, and said with a relaxed, affectionate smile that it was easy when I had my wife keeping me in line. The word left my lips so effortlessly, so naturally, that it took 2 full seconds for my brain to process the magnitude of what I had just uttered into the quiet diner air. The silence that followed was instant and deafening, punctuated only by the distant hum of the kitchen refrigerator and the quiet clink of silverware 3 booths down. Clara's smile broadened into an understanding, delighted grin as she whispered an apology for intruding on our special afternoon and quietly slipped away, leaving the heavy word hanging between us like a physical object on the table. My breath hitched in my throat, my pulse suddenly hammering against my ribs as horror and panic seized me, realizing that I had just violated our 10-year boundary in the most public, careless way possible. I looked across at Maeve, my face burning with embarrassment, ready to stumble over a dozen frantic apologies, ready to laugh it off as an absurd slip of the tongue, fully expecting her to roll her eyes or lightly kick my foot under the table to break the tension. Instead, Maeve froze completely, her fork hovering an inch above her plate as a deep, stunning crimson flush swept rapidly up her neck, spreading across her cheeks to the tips of her ears. She dropped her gaze to the wooden surface of the table, her hands trembling slightly as she pressed her lips together, her chest rising and falling in quick, uneven breaths. For several excruciating seconds, she didn't say a word, and in that agonizing pause, I saw 10 years of shared secrets, late-night phone calls, quiet sacrifices, and hidden glances flash before my eyes, realizing with a sudden, terrifying clarity that my foolish slip of the tongue hadn't just embarrassed her, it had ripped open a door we had spent an entire decade keeping carefully locked. I stammered, leaning forward over the table, my voice cracking slightly as I pleaded for her forgiveness, telling her how sorry I was, that my brain was tired, that it was just a stupid, mindless joke, and that I would never want to make things awkward between us. I reached out tentatively, reaching across the salt shaker to pull my hand back, afraid to touch her, telling her I took it back immediately and that she could mock me for it for the rest of our lives if she wanted. But as the words left my mouth, Maeve suddenly lifted her head, her eyes wide, shining with unshed tears and a fierce, raw emotion that I had never seen in her before. She looked straight into my eyes, her cheeks still burning red, and in a soft, trembling voice that carried more weight than a thunderclap, she leaned over the table, gripped my hand tight, and said, "Don't you dare take it back." Her words vibrated through me, stopping the blood in my veins as I stared at her, completely speechless, my heart pounding so hard against my ribs I thought she could hear it over the quiet ambient music of the diner. Maeve squeezed my hand tighter, her thumb brushing against my knuckles, refusing to let me pull away or hide behind my usual deflection. She took a deep, shuddering breath, her eyes searching mine with a terrifying blend of vulnerability and courage, and confessed that she had been waiting for years to hear that word come out of my mouth, that every single time she looked at me over a coffee cup or stood by my side while I learned to walk again, her heart had been calling me her husband in secret. She admitted that she had stayed quiet for years out of fear of losing the best thing in her life, terrified that if she asked for more, she would end up with nothing, but hearing me say it out loud had made her realize that hiding our true feelings was a far worse fate than taking a leap into the unknown. Sitting in that sunlit diner booth, bathed in the soft afternoon light filtering through the glass, the heavy veil that had obscured our reality for a decade simply evaporated. All the time she had lingered at my front door before saying goodbye, all the quiet moments where our eyes had locked just a second too long, and all the sacrifices we had made for each other suddenly aligned into a single, breathtaking picture of a love that had been growing right beneath our noses. The fear that had kept me paralyzed for years, the fear of being broken, unworthy, or burdensome, melted away as I looked at her brave, beautiful face and realized that love wasn't something you waited to be perfect for, it was something you built together in the middle of life's messy, imperfect moments. I slid out of my side of the booth and moved around the table, sitting right beside her, taking both of her warm, trembling hands into mine as the bright afternoon light cast a golden glow across our table. I looked her in the eyes and promised her, with absolute honesty and every ounce of strength I had left, that I would never take those words back, that I had been blind for far too long, and that if she would have me, I would spend every day for the rest of my life earning the right to call her my wife for real. Maeve let out a tearful, breathtaking laugh, burying her face in my shoulder as I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close while the warm bustle of the diner continued around us, completely unfazed by the quiet miracle that had just unfolded in corner booth 4. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking not about the painful past or the fears that had held us back, but about the future we were finally ready to build together. As we finally stepped out of the diner into the crisp afternoon air, holding hands openly for the very first time, the world felt entirely renewed, full of endless light and boundless promise. Before you go, please leave a meaningful comment below telling us, have you ever had a moment where a single mistake or slip of the tongue revealed a truth you were too afraid to admit? If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey.